U svijetu nogometa svatko igra svoju ulogu, a u toj svima nam najdražoj igri postoji jedan čovjek koji jednom objavom mijenja raspoloženja milijuna navijača. Kad on napiše Here we go, transfer više nije glasina, postaje stvarnost. On je danas najbrži, najutjecajniji i najpraćeniji sportski novinar na svijetu. Milijuni ljudi čekaju njegovu objavu, klubovi prate njegov profil, a igrači znaju da je gotovo tek kad on to objavi. Ali iza ekrana, iza milijuna pratitelja i iza transfera vrijednih stotine milijuna eura postoji i druga strana medalje. Ona koja ne govori o brzini, ekskluzivama, brojkama, govori o pritisku, o odgovornosti, o noćima bez sna i nevjerojatnoj predanosti poslu. Danas smo u Milanu i razgovaramo s čovjekom koji je promijenio način na koji pratimo transfere. Fabrizio Romano gost je nove epizode Druge strane medalje. Fabrizio, first of all, thank you for finding time in your busy schedule for this.
Thank you for coming to Milano. Welcome.
I have to ask you at the beginning, considering your famous statement that says actually that sleep is overrated. Did you sleep well?
Let's say, because these days, with Champions League and many things, I don't say that it's like the transfer window, but it's quite busy. Also preparing for the World Cup, so I think the next 6 months I will not sleep that much. But from September, I hope I will sleep better, definitely.
Do you find it more difficult with age right now?
Yeah, a bit more difficult. Yeah, to be honest, every year, you can feel the age a bit more. But I still love my job. I love what I do, so I don't feel like too much heavy pressure about that. I like it, so I keep working hard, and let's see till when.
Yeah, anyway, this is the part of the season that is a little bit more easy for you because the transfer window is closed. So how does your life look like in this period between winter and the summer transfer window?
Now it's completely different because, as you said, in the summer it's like super busy. Every second you have to be connected to the news, to every update, so you have to be always on point. Now is more relaxed in the sense that there is not that kind of obsession every second to check everything, but there is still the attention every second to everything. So anything can happen with managers, with injuries, with players. So I try to follow general football news, not just the transfers. So that's the first part. And then the second part is always about preparing for the summer. So I always say when the news are coming up in the summer, it's not that you get those news just because maybe you have a name or you're a journalist or whatever. You have to work on that before. And so build new connections, make sure that the old connections are still at the best level possible, try to meet new people. I like to travel also to see football games, to meet with football people also for a personal point of view, not just because of the work of the news, but because I enjoy being together. So there are several factors that make sure I'm not relaxing too much, but I'm still working way better now with less pressure, let's say.
The concept of this interview is actually to show the whole story and to show the people everything that stands behind the success, what they usually don't have an opportunity to see. So I would like to start with your childhood in Napoli, how it was and what do you remember?
It was very beautiful, to be honest. I think I've been really lucky as a kid in terms of family, in terms of environment, in terms of friends. I never had any big issues or big problems, anything dramatic, so I've been really lucky about it on a personal point of view. And also the environment in terms of city for me has been crucial. I love Napoli, I love my city, I love the energy from the city, so it's something that I think really impacted on my career because at the end of the day, I always say Napoli is really similar to South America. It's the most South American place probably in Italy for sure and maybe in Europe. So you can feel this vibe about football, the kids are playing in the streets and me as well. I was spending whole afternoons after school playing football in the streets with my friends. So this football passion really starts from there, and so the city had a big impact on me. And then, as I said, with my family, I always had the maximum support on trying to find the way I wanted, which was very clearly football, and they never tried to stop me. Of course, my mother wanted me maybe to be a doctor or whatever, but never trying to stop me, always supporting me. And then the big passion for football also inside my family, my brother, my father, always telling me everything about football, gifting me books or whatever, playing PlayStation with me, with my brother. So football has always been part of my life, and that's why it became my absolute only priority.
Yeah, as you said, Napoli is a synonym in a certain way for football, and you can feel it in every corner of the city. But in that period, when you were a kid, they were not even in first division. Was the passion the same, or?
Was even more probably, you know. Yeah, this is what makes Napoli special also to me, that despite being in third division, I always remember the first game since Napoli got the new owner, and so it was in third division or maybe in fourth division at that time when De Laurentiis bought the club. The first game, there were an incredible amount of people at the stadium supporting the team. Was looking like a Champions League game in third or fourth division. So this is Napoli. The passion is always there, and again, even more because you can feel it's really genuine when you go to the stadium and you show up in these moments, and not just when you're winning the title or you're going to play Champions League. It means that the passion is absolutely genuine. And so it was obviously a different moment, because in terms of impact personally, you can't see the top players close to you and also close to Napoli, apart from Roma, but it's still not that close. You don't have this direct contact with other places where you can go immediately and see a football game at the maximum level. So I was kind of suffering that because, you know, it's not the same possibility you have, for example, here in Milano, where you have Milan and Inter always at that level. But the passion at Napoli was completely different. And so that made an impact on me. And also then there is Maradona, that is not playing for Napoli, but looks like he's playing for Napoli still now because he's always everywhere.
Do you remember the first time when you talked about the idea of being a journalist?
Yeah, I remember, because I was like 10, 11 years old. Again, I was playing video games all the time, playing football in the streets all the time. So for me, football was absolutely everything. And I started telling my parents, like, my feeling is that I want to work in this world. I knew very early that I didn't have any skills to become a football player. So I was like, I really like these possibilities to explore something different. And then I always loved about writing something, of course, at school, what I could, but it was always my passion, reading books. So for me, it was always about this kind of media passion. Then I didn't expect it to become my work that early, of course. But then growing up, when I started to go to high school and to get closer to the 18 years old, which was when I wanted to move to Milano, I had already very clear when I was 14, 15 that my way was into football and into journalism. Then, you know, saying journalism can be many different ways to be a sports journalist, so you never know which way. But I was really lucky to understand that very early that I wanted to be into transfers and not into something maybe different.
Yeah, it was always about football, but there is also something that I don't think many people know about you, and it means that you are interested also in mafia journalism, if I'm right, and you still like those stories.
Yeah, that's always been one of my passions, let's say. Of course, it's not a beautiful one in terms of stories you hear, but it's part of my Napoli environment as well. I have this feeling that one day I wanted, when I was younger, I was like, maybe one day I want to become a journalist to tell people how it really goes on mafia. People know maybe what it is, but they don't know many details. They don't know many inside stories. And so I always had this desire to show people how it really works, how the dynamics of this world are really, really crazy and full of details people can't even imagine. So for me, that was a desire, but then I decided not to proceed, obviously for safety reasons and because I wanted my family to be okay, myself to be okay. So it remains my passion, because I really believe that the only way one day to destroy mafia will be to inform people about mafia and not keeping it silent.
So you still follow the stories?
I still do. Yes, absolutely. I still try always to inform myself, to get all the information possible, because I am a big fan of that word, and I'm sure that I hope that someone will try to do that in the future.
How did your parents react when you told them that you want to go to Milano to follow your journalism path, considering that they were, as you said, doing something completely different, I would say also much more secure in terms of salary, finding job and everything?
No, look, they always supported me, to be honest. They never said no, they never stopped me. They tried to make sure for myself to understand when I was 16, 17 that I was probably gonna enter in a world where it's not easy to make it, because many kids, many guys around the world want to become a journalist. And so they were like, okay, if you want to do that, but make sure you understand that it's not that easy. It's many people trying to compete. And so it's not an easy one. And it's also completely different from our environment, because again, in my family, my father and my mother were both doctors. In my family are working in completely different things and not into football. So usually football people sometimes arrive at the highest level when they have someone already involved into football. This was not the case. And so, you know, for me it was a big decision, but the only one. I never felt I had a plan B, plan C. For me it was football, journalism, try. And so no other ways.
Yeah, I'm asking that because there is that perception that there is no big money in football journalism, obviously, or any kind of journalism, and there isn't for 90% of people, and it's normal for parents that they want to protect you for
No, I understand that. And honestly, if I had a son now, I would tell him absolutely the same, because it's the reality, as you say. It's not that easy into football journalism now to be competitive at that level, and also financially, even if you are at the highest level. I used to work also in traditional journalism before digital journalism, and even when I was working with big companies here in Italy, financially was not that easy, especially if you are living in a city like Milano, which is super expensive for everything. So, that was also a point. But again, for me, there was no plan B, plan C. I wanted to try that, and probably this was part of the process. Very important to understand that for me, there was no other way.
You went there to the university, but after a year you quit. And from this point of view, it turned out to be the best decision possible.
Yeah, I'm still feeling a bit sad about that, to be honest. Yeah, I do, because at the end of the day, especially for my parents, especially for my father rather than my mother, it still matters a lot, and I understand that. It's a different mentality, a different traditional mentality, so I understand what they mean when they say university is important, studying is important. But I had a feeling while I was going to the university in the first year that I was wasting my time at some point. Some things were important, but in 80% of the time I was studying things that I didn't need at that point, because I already knew what I wanted from my professional career. And so that's why I made immediately this decision to quit, also because the exams are in the same time of the transfer window. It's in the summer and in January, so you can understand that it's
Tough
impossible.
Decision, huh?
It's impossible. Yeah.
But you appreciate education because you speak 4 languages, and which is insane for me that you learn them all by yourself. That's crazy. I mean, I speak 4 languages, and I know how hard it is to learn.
It's complicated. You know that.
How did you manage to do that?
Because I love those languages. Actually, the only languages I really studied when I was at the school was German. And I don't even remember one word, probably. Then all the others, I like that. It's about the songs, for example, the culture, things that don't make it heavy when you are studying that language. So for me, for example, with Portuguese, I always felt a connection with Brazilian people. I don't know why, with the Brazilian culture. I love that, absolutely. So for me, it was quite natural to try to understand. I was curious about every single word, and that makes it easier. Then if you speak Spanish, it's also easier to learn Portuguese. So it's about being fascinated by the languages. Then I know it's not perfect. It's not a perfect way to express yourself as it is when you study that. But for me, it's important to make sure you respect people, especially in our job. When you try to speak their language, you are showing some respect, and that really makes the difference.
Absolutely. You mentioned Portuguese. It's similar, like Napoli dialect, or it's not? Some people say that it is.
Can seem similar, but then when you have to speak, it is really, really different. So many Italians as well, we always think, just put a letter at the end of the sentence and it's going to be fine, but it's not going to be fine.
It looks easy, yeah. So you started soon working with the Sky Sports. Do you remember your first days there, how it was?
It was like Disneyland for me, because obviously I was 19, 20, so I was very young, and to have the opportunity to enter that kind of place with some journalists that for me were absolute legends and references, for me was obviously a big step. I didn't feel obviously ready because I was very young, but I felt like ready to say the first day I arrived, I will stay here as long as you need me, no problem, 8 hours, 9 hours, 12 hours, I don't care. So I'm here to work. I don't focus on anything else. And that kind of mentality, I think it's really, really important to help build your own credibility in any work, and especially in our world. Because, for example, I remember some people who were like, obviously, I respect that when you are 19, 20, maybe on weekends during the summer, you want to go with your friends, you want to travel, you want to go to the sea or whatever. For me, that was not an option. I always say I've never been to Ibiza, Formentera, and for my generation was absolutely impossible because they always wanted to go there. But for me, it was like, I want to do this. I want to work in football. And so imagine it was many years of staying in Milano during the summer, staying in Milano in January when it was very cold around the city. So it was not easy, but for me, it was the best job in the world. So I remember that as very beautiful days. And then the first day when I had the opportunity to go and catch Mauro Icardi, which for me was the easiest thing to do, but the only thing I could do that day, was like a message to myself, like saying, okay, this is your place.
Better than any Ibiza.
Yeah, exactly. For sure.
But you didn't like to stay in the office. You preferred working on the streets, which is, I would say, a really old school approach.
Yeah. I mean, more than a school for me was really the only option, because I was feeling quite annoyed by staying into the same building all day. And when you work in a big company, sometimes you waste a lot of your time. Maybe you stay there again 8, 9, 10 hours, but 50% of the time is maybe you are, eating or talking with people, or you become friends, or you create a story. There are many things happening inside. It's like a second family. And so you can't only focus on your work. When you are in the streets, is yourself against the world. I always say, okay, I had some friends around, but it's not the same thing. It's just maybe 2, 3 people around. But then you go around to try to meet new people, to build new connections, to create your own network, to have new faces to add to your daily job. And for me, that was the best thing possible. First of all, to get to know the city, which is a big city, but it's still a small center. And it also helps when you want to go around and try to meet with people outside hotels, outside restaurants. At that time, before COVID, was really easy. All the meetings were around, and so for me it was like the perfect place to be. And then many say, but how is possible they were answering to you? You were maybe 19, 20 when you are outside the restaurant. Why should I answer to you? I agree, but then if you are there every single day, cold, hot, January, summer, whatever, they will respect you. If you are nice, if you are respecting them, if you are not going just to look for the big headline, but you try to build a relationship, at the end of the day, they will respect you. So for me, that was the only way to make this job.
That's actually what I wanted to ask you. How did they look at you at the beginnings? Because you were approaching them, asking questions, showing up every single day. It must have been weird, at least for some of them.
Yeah, for some of them, yes. Then it depends how you are personally, as a person, not just maybe as an agent, or as a director, as a player. It depends how you respect people. And so if you see that someone is staying there because he's really trying to develop, try to build something, at the end of the day, if you find someone respectful, you can start entering into this world. Then, as I always say, you have to be lucky, because, for example, I had the big luck to meet with Fabio Paratici, who is now at Fiorentina, former Tottenham director, Juventus director for 9 years, winning 9 titles in a row. So I met with a person who at that time was at Sampdoria, was not that big, and then he became very big, and for me it made a difference to start building connections. So you have to be lucky, but luck is only coming if you are there every single day and if you are working hard every single day. So
you believe in that?
Yeah, I do. Absolutely.
In luck?
Yeah, I do. Yes, because moments at the end change your life. I was telling you before, when I arrived the first day at Sky, they tell me, go try to find Mauro Icardi around the city. Was the only person I knew in football at the time, his agent. So if they told me any other player in the world, I was not going to make it probably, or it was going to be difficult. With Icardi, I just sent a message, and for me it was the easiest job in the world. These are part of luck and destiny that I think are always part of our life.
So you have never been a shy guy?
No, never been that shy. No. For me, it was always an opportunity. I always saw these big media, these big companies, and this big opportunity I had when I was 19, 20. Again, as a chance to improve myself, to develop, but never being shy.
How far are you willing to go? If someone doesn't answer, for example, are you going to text 3, 5, 10 times?
No. That was not my style. That was never my style. Never be obsessive. I was only trying to make sure people understood my intent, that I don't want to have the big headline. That's never been my mission. And I think it's also been part of this process. Never try to be the main man. I think it was built for the long term and not built for the big headline. So I really wanted people to understand that. Don't give me the big breaking news, but respect me every single day. I prefer like this. And so that's how it started.
Did you ever doubt yourself in that period or have a fear of failure?
To be honest, no. I never had a feeling that this was not going to work. I always had a feeling that this was going to change, because at the end, journalism is always changing, I think, and it's really important to be reactive, to understand about the platforms and all the rest. But again, I think I've been lucky also to become part of the generation, our generation, where social media were already part of our, our process. Because maybe for the generation before, it was probably difficult to understand that social media were going to become something big into journalism. So when I entered Sky, many people from the old generation were like, we have to avoid social media. Let's protect our product. Let's protect our TV.
Still.
Yeah, still. Sometimes still. I don't know if it's a Sky or any places, but still some big media are still doing the same. So like social media are our enemy, not our friend. And I think that created a problem for many big media. I'm not talking about Sky, but many others around the world. I think they lost many years thinking that. And for myself, it was easier to understand that building myself also on social media and not just in traditional media was probably the only way to survive long term.
Do you remember some big story from that period that you found or discovered on the street?
Yeah, there are so many. One with Dybala for me will always remain special, because one day Dybala was maybe the main player in Serie A at that time in terms of young players, doing fantastic at Palermo. It was January, was very cold in Milano. Dybala was scoring goals every single week, was mid-season, and all top clubs wanted him. Milan, Inter, Juventus, English clubs, so there were many rumors. And so in the morning I was around the city, and the president of Palermo comes out of the hotel, and I say, can we do an interview or whatever, because I see you were with the agent of Dybala. And he says, yes, let's do that. And he does a big announcement saying Dybala will stay with us, Dybala will sign a new contract, we have an agreement with his agent, so everything is done, Dybala stays. And so I say, okay, that's a big one. We released the interview in the afternoon on Sky, so it was also a big moment for me. I was very happy to have that kind of interview with a big president, big player, big story, so nice one. And then late night, it was after dinner, like around 10:30, I was still going around the city, and after those rounds around the city, at one time in another hotel, I find the Juventus director, Pratili, with the agent of Dybala. And so they were together in another hotel. They come outside, I take a video, and they were like, what are you doing? We are just talking about houses in Buenos Aires, because I want to house. I said, okay, this video will never exist anymore. Don't worry, I will not publish. Also because personally, I understood that on the same day, while the president announces Dybala is staying, they were doing the agreement for the summer. So, okay, Dybala was actually staying till the end of the season, but to say on the same day that Dybala was going to be sold to Juventus in the summer was probably not the best news for Palermo fans. And so I made sure that video was not going to be published. I stay silent, but this helped me build the relationship with all people involved in the story. And then they told me first when they reached an agreement with Dybala and with Juventus, so on every single point. And so for me, it was still a big story, but also helped me to build my network. And so that one will always stay with me. To have those kind of two stories on the same day from two different hotels was crazy.
No, but it's also the beginning of a friendship.
Also, yes. And then sometimes there are some moments, like for me will be iconic when Juventus signed Cristiano Ronaldo, to be outside of the hotel when the directors came out of the hotels, and to see their faces. They were happy like kids, In that moment you are no longer the Juventus CEO or the Juventus director, but you are the man who is signing Cristiano Ronaldo. You are happy like a kid who is signing Cristiano Ronaldo on PlayStation. So that was the feeling, and to be there in that moment, I remember their excitement after the signing was something fantastic for me as a journalist, to be there in that moment where the football world was watching that specific moment, and was only myself and 2-3 more people, so it was special.
You mentioned Mauro Icardi before, and that's actually the story that has changed your life completely. It's not from the streets, but still it has changed your life. Here probably it's very popular, but I doubt that people in Croatia know it. So can you tell us about it?
Yeah, it's a story that is still feeling crazy to me today, to be honest. It's many years, but I still don't know how that guy who was an Italian it was an Italian guy working in a bar close to La Masia, which is Barcelona Academy. So he was just working in a bar, and then he became an agent. But how? He was texting me, and I still don't know how he got my number, because I was writing on a very small website here in Italy. And this guy texts me and says, I'm always here every single day in this bar next to La Masia. I'm working here, I'm Italian. And many players come. Imagine that was a completely different world. I'm talking about 2008, 9, something like that. I think 2009. So you didn't have this possibility like nowadays with Instagram or whatever to get in touch with people. You had to have a phone number. So this guy sends me this message. I reply, we speak by phone, and he says, every day I have players coming here, I want to become an agent, so if you can do an article about these players, not saying anything specific, just presenting these players to the world. And so just say about their skills, Mauro Icardi and Gerard Deulofeu. Icardi is a striker, Deulofeu is a winger, so if you can present them these skills, these goals they scored this season, that's it. I said, okay, let's do that. And then he starts working after that, after a few months, with the agency of Mauro Icardi, helping them, the first agency before Van Danara came in. And this guy told me, I will always be in debt with you, I will give you something back. And then when they did the deal first to Sampdoria, was my first news in terms of transfers. So Icardi going from Barcelona to Sampdoria, and then from Sampdoria to Inter, for me was the first big breaking news. And I still remember the call, it was November. Imagine that Icardi transferred to Inter in the summer, so it was like 8 months before. And he called me in November, it was no in Milan, I always remember. He called me and he says, I owe you this one because you helped me with Mauro. And now I can tell you that the final signing of Inter president Moratti is going to be Icardi. So you can go all in. I was like, but in the press they say Roma, Napoli, Milan, Juventus all trying. yes, he told me, but Icardi will go to Inter. There was a handshake between all parties. Today they decided, so you can go all in. And there was absolutely no one, on this small website writing Icardi to Inter every single day. And then in the summer it happened. And for me, the first day at Sky was actually me going around the city to find Icardi, which was very easy to do the first interview with him, exclusive. And so that was a big moment. But for me, it was the real game changer, not just for the news, but to make myself feel I want to do this job.
Are you still in contact with that guy?
Yeah, sometimes we speak.
And
but
you
he
didn't
still
ask
tells me,
him?
I don't remember. He tells me. He says, I really don't remember who gave me your number, but good story. So I'm still happy.
Destiny that we mentioned before.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Actually, you don't like working for anyone. I saw that, and it's okay, super fine right now. But in that period, I believe it was a tough decision to leave the job that was a stable job in a field that you had always wanted.
Yes, but at the same time, I felt there was no other way. So on one side it was tough because obviously, as you say, it's a big company, many friends, many people who helped me reach the level I reached. So I was also feeling like I don't want to go to another traditional media, to bring my knowledge somewhere else after I gave my best to Sky, and Sky helped me to develop my journalistic skills. So I didn't want to go to a direct competitor. I had this possibility. For example, I had a proposal from a big newspaper in Italy. They wanted to make myself like the big guy there, but I said, no, I don't want to be in direct competition with Sky. I want to do something different. So on one side was tough. On the other side, for me, there was no other way because I respect that. They were really focused on Italian football, Italian news, Italian players. Obviously, it's an Italian company, so I understand that. But for me, the obsession was also about international football. I wanted to try something more international and not just national, not just Italian. And so I told them, for me, this is absolutely the only way. Was difficult, again, especially to explain to my family, to be honest, because my family, again, is very traditional, especially my mother from the south, so we are really with this mentality. And she was like, are you sure? What are you doing? Why are you doing this? But for me, there was no other way. I remember there was an episode, I think it was in 2020 or 2021, when Harry Kane was close to joining Manchester City. And I was live on Sky to do something about Parma. They were in second division and they wanted me to stay live half an hour to explain people how was the Parma strategy working. I mean, this is the regular job you do at Sky when you work in a TV. But then during that half an hour, I find my phone, I see my phone ringing, but I couldn't answer as I was live on TV. Then after that, I checked my phone and was people from Harry Kane camp saying, I wanted to tell you a big story. Harry Kane is not going to training tomorrow because he wants to go to Man City, so he's going to force the move. Let's see what happens with Tottenham. And I couldn't answer to that call, and they gave the news to another English media because for 30 minutes I couldn't reply, and they said I needed the news out immediately, so you couldn't reply. And I said it doesn't make sense that I'm here talking about, with all respect, second division on another channel, and I can't pick up my phone to talk about Harry Kane. I'm being really stupid on this. And so I said from September, for me, it has to be different. And so that was the moment.
That's actually something that pushed you to do the decision?
No, that made the difference. Yeah, to make me definitely understand that I had to change.
While you were questioning that decision, what was in your head the worst possible scenario?
To be honest, I never had the feeling that there was
No?
anything negative to happen. No, I understood that this was going to mean you're going to work even more because, okay, when you work in a big media, you work a lot, of course, but maybe you can be more focused on your own, hours or whatever, your own project, your own league, your own club. When you work for yourself, you have to make sure that you have everything in control. And that's my obsession actually still today, that I want to be on everything. I don't want to leave anything. And so I understood that probably the negative part was going to be about managing my own time as a person rather than as a journalist. But I never ever thought, okay, I'm not going to do that, I'm going to change. Never.
No, sometimes it's actually easier to make decisions like that when you're very young because you don't think too much.
Exactly, you don't think too much. And also for me, again, my work has always been my absolute priority over everything. I've been, again, lucky is probably the word I'm saying more, but it's the reality also to find some friends who work into football journalism as well. So my 2-3 best friends are all into the same business, and this helps a lot because when you want to, go out for lunch or dinner and you are on your phone, they're not creating problems, they understand. When you go to the stadium and you have to be on your phone and not watching the game, they understand. So to have people around me understanding what I was doing was also helping and facilitating the process for sure.
Social media was crucial, absolutely, for you. Twitter at the beginnings, do you remember how many followers did you have when you first started publishing things there?
On Twitter, absolutely don't remember anything about followers, I don't remember. Also because I always had a strange relationship with followers in general, still today. I still believe that is important, but the most important part is the numbers you are actually producing with your content, not just with followers. I always say followers are like fans in the stadium. You can have many fans in the stadium, but then if you are not playing beautiful football or if you are not winning, it's still not a good project. So for me, it's important to deliver to people who follow me, not just to say I have this number of followers. So I was never checking that much. So on Twitter, I don't remember. The only thing I remember about followers is on Instagram, which in 2020, I was at my friend's birthday in July 2020, right after the most difficult part of COVID. And I remember we were at this birthday and I was celebrating 433,000 followers because it was 433 on Instagram. And so we celebrated together and it was 2020. So now it's 42 million, 5 or 6 years later. So that's the only thing I remember about followers in my process.
No, but it's incredible when you think, because you were persistent in the same way even then. Maybe you had to work even harder.
Yeah, you have to. I mean, have to know, but it depends on your mentality, how you approach this. If you see there is a place where you want to be, where you want to go, or if you believe there is always something more you can deliver and develop. So for me, it's always been like this. Try to do more, try to feel even more comfortable with different kind of content, try to create on different platforms. For example, I had the possibility at some point with these followers growing to say, okay, now I will start creating my own app and I will put everything there. Many journalists do that, to say, I have my own app, come on my website, come on my app if you want to check my news. But I never wanted to ask people €1. I always believe in the process where it's easy to find your news. So you open Instagram, you open Twitter, you open YouTube, and in 5 seconds you can access to everything. It's not a difficult process when you have to do 3 more clicks or close 2-3 windows of edit. I think this can also help. So my investment was always on myself and not on asking people for money or creating an app or whatever. So that was always my business model.
Now you're the point of reference for many people. I have personally been in many situations in which people say, I don't know, this player is going there, this coach is going to be fired. And I'm like, no, Fabrizio didn't post anything. And it's not just me. I mean, many people do that. Do you see that as a responsibility or as a pressure?
No, it's a responsibility. Sometimes you feel the pressure, but it's not about the news. It's about the desire to try to make sure that everything is posted at the right time with the right content. So it's a positive pressure, I say. You want to deliver. You really want to deliver. I say it's like a player who wants to score a goal. It's not an obsession sometimes, but it's just positive vibe. So for me, it's exactly like this. It's a responsibility. At the end of the day, it's a big responsibility because with years passing by, you have this feeling that every single piece of news, and that's the most difficult part for me today, is having an impact on someone. So it's having an impact on a club, it's having an impact on a player, it's having an impact on the family of the player, on the agent, on the other club selling or buying the player. So sometimes you can really impact the negotiation. And so I have to make sure I'm doing my job well in terms of finding the right news. I'm doing my job well in terms of releasing the news at the right time. But also, especially this, I'm doing my job well in terms of not creating problem to anyone when I'm releasing the news, which is really difficult because now after so many years, I know so many people and I don't want to upset them because I understand them. At the beginning, I was more like, in the position where you say, I do whatever I want. So I want to post because I have the information, I post immediately. Now I feel for them because I know the industry better. I know how it means, what it means sometimes for them. And to impact a transfer just because you want to be first, I prefer to wait a bit more and to make sure that they are happy with the news.
And how do you handle the pressure? And have you ever been in a situation where you were on the edge of saying, okay, this might be too much?
Yeah, I mean, with the pressure, no. I never had the feeling that this was gonna be too much because at the end of the day, I've always been happy with what I did. In some moments, you really need to be on point. So I think what's really important is to understand the moments. If you work into football in general and especially in the transfer window. So like the final weeks for me is something that I stay closed in a room and I work from there. There is nothing else you can do. For the final 10, 12 days, just be there, and fight on every single piece of news. Then there are some other moments where you can be more relaxed. But I never had a moment where I said, okay, this is too much. For me, the real problem, and again, is similar to the point I was telling you before, sometimes the real problem is about creating problems to others. That's something I'm really suffering now. A few years ago, I didn't really care. But now, you know, I have many friends in football, many friends who can be, again, a player, a director, an agent, or whoever, and you can impact their business. And that's not something I want to do. So probably now, with years passing, I will keep going slower because I prefer to be even more respectful.
Does that create inner conflict? Because as you said, if you have a friend and you know that something is going to happen, you cannot publish it because you will destroy the friendship, relationship, everything.
No, absolutely. It's happening, I'm not saying every day, but every week, yes. I know many things that I can say, always, every day. As a journalist, you suffer because you want to break the news, you want to tell people, but you have to understand that you can't always be sharing everything you know, because otherwise you can create a problem to negotiations. And when your living is growing as a journalist, you have also to understand that you need to respect the industry. You can't kill people in terms of sharing news at the wrong moment, because you can really impact the negotiation. Like last summer, it happened with Paquetá to Aston Villa. Paquetá to Aston Villa was at very advanced stages at the end of the window, and in that time you can't wait because it's the final 2-3 days. So you know there is nothing to wait. The market is about to close, so you have to be fast. But in that case, I was sharing the news, was reality. It was not only myself, because I saw the news was coming out in England, so I said, okay, now I can say that Paquetá is very close to join Aston Villa. And then West Ham fans reacted when I saw my news. The owners decided not to sell the player anymore. And it broke a negotiation that was almost done. Probably some people involved in the negotiation told me, if you were not going to share that news, Paquetá today was an Aston Villa player. But this is the market sometimes. If it's not me, it's going to be someone else.
Toni Kroos retirement, similar
Also,
story.
Yeah. About Toni Kroos retirement, I knew like 2-3 months before, but I was never going to share about that. Then usually when I say this story, people say, but why you say it with Thiago Alcantara? Why you say it? Because sometimes it's the players who want me to break the story. Like with Thiago Alcantara, many people told me, you say with Toni Kroos, you didn't share the story, but with Thiago you said exclusive. But Thiago told me, please, I want you to be the one to make the announcement. And so, you know, if the player wants, I'm always respecting, especially on retirement, which is something really personal, I always respect the player. So if it's an official statement, if it's the player asking to share the news, I'm more than happy. If it's something they want to share themselves, I can only wait, as I did with Toni Kroos.
How difficult is to check the information, or better to say how difficult it was before, because I guess it was much more difficult than it is now.
At the beginning was difficult because, you know, you need to make sure people know you. I think social media are helping not just me, but journalists in general now, because now it's easier to make sure people from the industry can see who you are. Even as a journalist, as you can be, a journalist in transfer market as well, people can see from the outside what kind of job you did. Imagine like 10-15 years ago, again, you can only have a phone number. So someone is texting you, asking you for something, and you say, who is this guy? From Italy, from Croatia, from England, from whatever. What do you want from me? Now with Instagram, you can see who is the person, what did they do, who is following that person, if that person is credible. So it's not just about myself. I think for all the journalists, it's easier to present yourself to the world. And that's really positive, I think, because now it's easier to get in touch with people. Also, football changed a lot. I think maybe 10-12 years ago when I started to follow a negotiation was more complicated because maybe there was an agent involved and then the two clubs, the directors. Now for a negotiation, you have a big agency. Into the agency, there are maybe 10-15 people. And so it's many sources where you can try to ask and check the news. And then the families of the player, you can reach out on Instagram. For example, it's very easy, something you couldn't do in the past. And then in the clubs, there are so many people, maybe from the marketing team, maybe from the technical staff. It's full of people who can become a very good source. I always say the best news of my life came out of people who are not important at all. Really.
Really?
Yeah.
How often does it happen that that they give you actually the wrong information, maybe even with intention?
At the beginning, it happened a lot because I think it happens to many journalists. So they try to force something that maybe is not the intention sometimes to give false news, but sometimes to force something that's not actually advanced as it is. So maybe they receive a call, maybe an agent from a club, and they make that call like a negotiation, which is not a negotiation, it's just a call. So they can make out a big thing of that. But it happened, but now I think it's not happening anymore because they know that at the end, football world is very small. And when you know everyone, it takes 2 seconds to tell all the people this person is not behaving well and is trying to sell something false. When you're behaving bad with one person, it means you're going to behave bad also with other people in the industry.
True.
And so for me, it's always been like this. Respect and get respected. It happened to me that someone tried to give me false information, but I was really the upset level was that big that I think we never spoke anymore. It was with a player who went to Chelsea. It was like 3 or 4 years ago. A defender who went to Chelsea. This story made me really upset because the agent was telling me that the player was going to Newcastle. And I was that upset that I blocked him and I said, never text me anymore, whatever you want, because you don't exist anymore to me. So
what was the intention?
I think was to push Chelsea. And then the Chelsea story came out of nowhere. I mean, it's also on myself because you need to control everything, not just the player side. But at that time, the player side was that sure about Newcastle that was saying he's in advanced conversations, he's in talks. But then Chelsea arrived, signed the player. He didn't tell me. I said, okay, maybe about Newcastle was even true. But if another club is coming, you have to inform me. Otherwise, I'm going on the wrong way. And so I said, forget about myself. I delete the number. You don't exist. Block everywhere.
But I would say that actually agents do that very often, maybe not with you, but
no, with
in
me,
general, not with you,
lucky.
yeah, but
no, I'm quite lucky.
they like to put any information in the news just to sell someone. Or
I know. That's why it's important, and that's always the first rule. You can be big, small journalist or whatever, but it's always important to check the news. Always. I'm always doing that. Even if it's from the best sources, okay, if you have the best sources, sometimes you can be more safe. But it's always important to check the news and to make sure at least 2-3 people confirm to you the same information.
When were you the most afraid that you might be wrong about something?
Many times, to be
Really?
honest. Yeah. Probably the Tuchel story, Nagelsmann-Tuchel story from Bayern was the one where I couldn't believe it. It really didn't make any sense to me because I always say, okay, you can have the information, you can have the contacts, you can have the sources, but then using your brain is always the most important thing, at least to me. For me, I want to understand why something is happening. It's not just that someone is calling me or texting me and put out. Otherwise, you are a machine. I want to be part of the process and understand why this club, why this player, why this agent is doing this. And at the time with Bayern being first in the table in Bundesliga, beating Manchester City in Champions League, keep going in the domestic cup, why should you sack the manager? Nagelsmann was doing fantastic, also young, talented manager, so why? I knew there were problems between Bayern and Nagelsmann, but not at the stage to fire your manager in March. So when I got that information, I remember it was international break, I was like, okay, I told this person, I will call you tomorrow, let's talk for the summer, so no problem. And he was like, no, it's happening now, it's not for the summer. Nagelsmann out, Tuchel in. I was in shock because I said, how is this happening? I can't understand. And then no one was confirming to me, no one was replying to messages of all the sources involved, the agent of Nagelsmann, Bayern, no one replying. So it was like, there is something strange in this story. Then one person involved told me, I don't know how you got this information. I think it's actually like 10 of us maximum who know this story. I don't know how you got it. So it's true. I should tell you it's not true, but I respect the fact that you got this information. I don't know how, and I have to tell you the reality. It's true. Tomorrow Tuchel will be the new Bayern manager. But when I posted, I was really scared because I was like, how is this possible? I can't believe it.
Even he didn't know.
No, he didn't know. Nagelsmann didn't know. Nagelsmann the following day was like, I was with my girlfriend having holidays. It was international break. And I found out on Twitter that I was going to be fired by Bayern. So that's why Bayern didn't reply, because they were still discussing internally. They want to make sure that Tuchel was okay before calling Nagelsmann. But that created the problem in terms of timing. Then from Bayern, they were very upset at me on that moment. But I said, I text you, I call you for 2 hours, not 2 seconds. So you had the opportunity to call, manage the news. And the following day from Bayern, they told me, you're right, we were wrong. We didn't manage the news well. So you were respectful. And so for me, that was important to have also this kind of feeling with the club that I was not doing anything against them.
Yeah.
I tried, but if you don't reply for 2 hours, is your problem, not my problem. Then to see Lothar Matthäus the following day, I remember that interview for me is like a golden medal at the Olympics because he said, I don't know how an Italian guy can break a story on Bayern and no one knew about it in the German press. For me, it was like, he's Lothar Matthäus, he's a Ballon d'Or, he's a legend of the game, so wow.
I have noticed that many people don't believe that you publish everything by yourself and that they think that there is a whole team of people behind everything.
No, I post everything by myself on Twitter, on Instagram, basically everywhere I post everything by myself, on TikTok as well, because I like to have control of on the information I put out. I think it's a form of respect for people who follow me as well. It's too easy to say I have many followers, I have many people following me, and then there is someone else posting. For me, it's part of the process to make sure that people know that I'm taking responsibility. If I do something wrong, I can never say it was my friend, it was my team, it was my guy who did something wrong. It's myself, so every single word matters. I think that's really important, and that's also part of the process. When you make sure that everything goes smoothly on every single transfer, every single piece of news, because a word can make the difference. If you say agreement or verbal agreement, it's a different word, it's a different story. So you have to make sure that every single detail of the news is protected and is in control. If you start delivering the news to different people, maybe I'm telling someone is telling someone else who is now working, the quality of the final product is not going to be the same. In my opinion, then is not the absolute truth. There are many other people who like to work in a different way. But for me, this is the only way to deliver at the best level
So
possible.
you have just the guy for video editing and Matteo?
Video editing, yes, Matteo Moreto, who works with me on the Italian news and the Spanish news. And then I have a guy for the graphics who helps me to obviously prepare all the graphics for Here We Go or whatever it is. But then in terms of news and posting the actual content is everything by myself, yeah.
I understand the people as well, because it seems impossible. Okay, when we talk about 5 top leagues, maybe difficult but possible, but you cover literally everything. I mean, even Croatian football now.
No,
so
Croatian football not that much.
But still,
just a bit.
Sometimes you post things. How do you find that kind of information?
You know, sometimes you have connections that can come from Croatian football or maybe from other people who is involved in the negotiation. That's the beauty of football. Many people tell me, but why you care about this kind of news, maybe on a manager of that team and not just only on Real Madrid, Man United or whatever. I said, for me, it's also exciting that sometimes, of course, not every day, not every minute, but sometimes if you have an information that didn't reach the local press yet, you can break that and people feel excited saying, how is possible this guy is having this information? So for me, it's still exciting, you know. I'm not saying that it's more exciting than breaking a story maybe on a big club, but almost. Sometimes for me to give that kind of news is special. When you get the name out of nowhere and saying he's going to that club and it's not that big, for me it's still exciting.
Yeah,
as a journalist.
People are very surprised when they see.
I notice.
So should we expect some big moves when it comes to Croatian players during this summer? Not in Croatian league, but I mean,
Let's see. I think, for example, now I can give you one. I'm still waiting to tweet, but I think Gvardiol could sign a new contract at Manchester City. I think there is a negotiation ongoing. So
even with the injury?
Let's see. Yeah, they are negotiating. So let's see when is going to be the timing. And then let's see for summer transfers. For sure there will be something. It's a country where it's full of talents, full of young players for the future. So I'm sure there is going to be something.
Here We Go is probably the most popular hashtag in general in the world, not just in the world of football. And it came out of nowhere. You didn't even plan it.
I didn't. No. Many people think that maybe there was a strategy with marketing team or agency or whatever, but that was not the case. It was just me always tweeting about many stories, and especially on Man United that summer. I remember there was a negotiation, but I don't know which one. Really, I don't really remember. And I was tweeting about every single detail, every single day. Sometimes, you know, in football there are fast negotiations, but also very slow ones that maybe you tweet for the same negotiation for 1 month, even 2 months, or 3, like Alexander Isak to Liverpool last summer was actually 3 months of negotiations. And so I was posting a lot. And then at the end of the story, I said, here we go for something like, okay, finally it's over, this story. And I noticed that people in the comments were like, can you say also for Liverpool, for Barca, for Real Madrid, for Bayern? And I said, why not? Maybe people need to know something in terms of the feeling they have on the negotiation. Maybe many journalists are saying, okay, the deal is advanced, the deal is almost done, the deal is verbally agreed, but they don't have this feeling of, okay, now it's actually agreed and we can wait for an official statement. So for me, it was a big opportunity. I said, why not? Let's try to do this. And then step by step, it developed into something that for me still looks crazy, but amazing.
Yeah, everyone is using it right now. How does your day look like during the transfer window?
It's very basic, to be honest. It's not exciting at all during the transfer window. It's more exciting now where maybe I travel, I can go around. During the transfer window, I usually go to one single place. and I stay there for most of the time, 99% of the time, unless I have something special to do somewhere else. I try to stay there, to stay focused, because when you travel, you lose a bit the control. Maybe you can't use your phone properly, maybe it's a different time zone, maybe people around you can create problems, maybe you can't create content because you are going around, and so the quality of your content, of your video or whatever is not the same. So I prefer to stay in a single place during the transfer window and just be on my phone. Call people, text every single minute basically, and also then produce content around that, because the output is as important as the information. I always say you can have the best news in the world, the best information in the world, but then if you put it out in not sexy way in terms of content, this could be a problem. I'm sure there are so many journalists who do a fantastic job, but sometimes again traditional media are still going out follow a process that is not that quality. Many others are on very good level in my opinion, but others are still not there, and so maybe the journalist value is not going that up because of the media where it's sharing the things. So for me the output is really, really important, and that's also a big part of the process, especially during the transfer window when you have to be very, very fast.
Yeah, and once you published your screen time, it was more than 17 hours, if I'm right.
Yeah, during
That's
the final
insane,
days,
like-
yeah, it was 19, I think, in the final.
19 also.
Yeah, in the final 2-3 days is crazy. I can even sleep like 2-3 hours, and then it's the only way. It depends, because it's not always like this. Sometimes the end of the window is more quiet. I remember maybe 2 or 3 years ago was very quiet. Then sometimes, as last summer, was completely crazy. I think last summer on deadline day in the summer there were like 15 or 20 top deals around the world. I remember Donnarumma, I remember Anthony, Juventus signed 2 players, and then in England, like crazy, Liverpool signed Alexander Isak on midnight in the final days. It was absolutely crazy. So in those moments you have to be on point. You can't sleep. I remember at 4 a.m. my friends were sleeping and I was still on phone for Xavi Simons to Tottenham, because he did the medical at Tottenham at 3:30 a.m. in the night to make sure no one saw him going to the training ground. So you have to be on point. That's the only way.
You said that you avoid traveling, but what if you have to travel in that period and
You
be
have to do
offline?
that. Yeah, I mean, you have to accept that. Then in some moments it's tough, because, you know, I remember, for example, I had to travel once when I was sharing the story on Mazraoui and the league, leaving Bayern and joining Man United. It was in the middle of the window, but it was, I think, on final day. Yeah, probably Charity Shield, could be at the beginning of August, with Man United playing. It was a Saturday, lunchtime. Man United were playing like a 3 or 4, something like that. And so I say, okay, they will never close a deal at lunchtime on the same day when there is match day and you are fighting for a title. So usually you are never going to negotiate on match day few hours before. So I said it's a 2 hours flight. I have to go to Napoli, so let's do that. And then I land and the news was already out. And for me, I was in total control of the news. And I had the message on my phone from my source telling me it's done. And it was actually a few minutes before it went viral. So I was like, you see,
Difficult
you don't
to
have to
accept
travel.
them?
Yeah, but you need to accept. I mean, at the beginning, I was really upset. At the beginning of my career when I did these kind of things. Now I'm accepting that. I say, okay, you can't be always every single second on point. People will still wait for you, so accept that.
What makes you calm in the situations like that? And can you switch off if you want?
No,
Or it's impossible?
I also think that now it's been many years. So, you know, I think
Experience?
you try to, experience, and also to respect yourself also as a person. People will understand. Not all people are. I think the feeling I have is that many people in the industry, I mean fans, football fans who follow the transfers industry and the football industry in general, now they are less obsessed with the process of the news, like bid made, bid rejected, 1 million more, 2 million more, they want this money, they're offering this money. I think it's getting a bit boring. People are quite tired of that, and they prefer to wait for the end of the negotiation, beginning and end of the negotiation, rather than being on all single detail. This was a big part of the business for myself as well, but I'm getting tired of that, and I feel many people are getting tired of that. They prefer to understand who is the target, happening or not, rather than having every small update every minute. So this is also entering my mind to say, okay, it's better to wait a bit more, but make sure that you are not being annoying on the news.
When you reach something in life in general, I don't think it's difficult to build new connections, because people like to be in your presence, but it's difficult to maintain them. So how do you do that, especially considering that you know who knows how many people from the football world?
Yeah, it's not that easy, but at the same time, I think after so many years, if you don't build genuine connection apart from the news, you are not going to make it long term into journalism, because the only way is to feel comfortable with the people you have around you. Then I always say it's like a class at school. You can't be in a fantastic relationship with everyone. Maybe you have 30 classmates around you, and okay, this could be very good relationship, maybe with 5, maybe with 10, maybe with 5 you are not speaking, maybe with 5 you are natural. So it's part of life in a work environment, in school environment, and also in the football environment. But I have many friends, many real friends in football, many people who can be maybe directors, maybe agents. And trust me, when I meet them, even players, when I meet them, for me, it's like meeting part of my family. Because apart from the news, apart from the followers and all this stuff, if you don't build these kind of connections, it's difficult to stay so many years into this industry.
Absolutely,
Because sometimes it happens that, especially the players, more than agents or directors, they see the journalists as enemies because they can create problems. They want the big headline, they want the big scoop. And so I remember one sentence a player from Inter, a Croatian player, but I will not tell you who, told me.
Difficult to guess.
He told me many times I saw journalists as enemies, creating me problems. Many times they were making big headlines on me. But with you, when I'm sitting at the table, I feel like I'm meeting my friend. I'm not meeting a journalist. And for me, that's the best compliment possible, because that's always my mission. Try to build the best connection and not to be a problem for someone. Try to be probably a good friend.
Can you explain me the feeling when you have something really, really big to publish? Is it like adrenaline or something similar?
Yeah, it's adrenaline. It's adrenaline, and sometimes you feel, at least I feel, that this news can really go everywhere in the world. Since I travel a lot in the recent years, for me it's crazy that when I meet with people in crazy places, it can be in the Middle East, in the Maldives, in South America or wherever, you can meet maybe people who are having really normal works around the world, and they tell you, I remember when you said, here we go for that news for Man United, for Liverpool, for Real Madrid, for Barcelona, but it's very normal people, maybe working in an airport or maybe working as a taxi driver or whatever. And for me, this feeling makes it special, because then when you are sharing a big, big news, when maybe it's Messi, it's Ronaldo, it's Neymar, it's this kind of big names or big clubs, you know that this is gonna impact the whole world. When you have the small story or small update, okay, it's beautiful, but it's part of the daily routine. But when there is something big, you know this is gonna reach even people who are going to remind you for many years in crazy angles of the world. And for me, this is magic. This is the power of football, that at the end of the day, with this news, you can go everywhere. And so it's a really magic feeling. More than adrenaline, for me, is the feeling that this is going to be worldwide. There is no place in the world where people will not see this. And for me, this is unbelievable if I think where I started all of this.
Do you have that same feeling that you had many years ago when you started, or it's a different right now?
No, it's different, because when I started, I really wanted the news to go well, you know, because sometimes you are scared, you are like, okay, I'm trying to do my best, but my network was way smaller. And so you want to trust the person who gave you the information. The timing of the information, sometimes you don't control that well. And so you're quite facing the feeling of, let's hope this is really going smoothly, there is no problem, because sometimes I don't control that. I can say that the deal is done, but then verbally agreed doesn't mean signed. I can't sign contracts, I always say. And so I had that kind of feeling. Now it's different. Now is more, I can't wait for this to go everywhere, because it's a feeling I love. I love football fans to be connected, to see the reactions. So for me, it's something really special in that sense. At the beginning was more like hope. I hope that this is gonna work because I have the information, yes, but maybe you don't control the timing at the same level you control now.
Was it even competition at the beginning?
Yeah,
now?
also, of course. This is also a very good point, because then at the beginning you are not probably that big in terms of numbers, and so also people are constantly testing you and trying to see if that guy in Italy is really gonna deliver on everything. Now I think people can maybe know that you are never gonna sell them something fake. Maybe things can happen or not happen, but this is not in my control. This is still happening nowadays. Like Mark Gehi to Liverpool, for example, last summer, I think is the perfect example. I said, here we go on deadline day, but I will still say, here we go every single time I talk about that story, because the boy was having a medical at Liverpool. Then if Palace president decides to retire the proposal, break the deal, despite having everything agreed and the player in London having his medical with Liverpool is not in my control.
Yeah, you also got so many big awards, published many big transfers. When were you the most proud of yourself?
Good question. To be honest, I'm not really into this kind of things like awards or all the rest, because okay, it's beautiful, it's a very beautiful feeling, but for me the most special thing is what came from people who are really important into the football business. For example, I remember once I went to Paris to meet with people at Paris Saint-Germain. Was actually the first game of Luis Enrique as PSG manager. PSG Lorient, one of the worst football games I saw in my life, 0-0 and maybe 0 shots on target. But then Luis Enrique, I think he did quite well at Paris Saint-Germain, so they can be more than happy. Fantastic coach, I love him. And I met with Nasser Al-Khelaifi there at the stadium. And when he told me something like, I'm always following your news, I'm always checking on your news. Compared to the past when you were only waiting for the traditional media, now there is the traditional media, but I'm always checking on my Instagram stories. What did you post? What are you saying? It's like I can make sure I refresh every single day on international football world, and I know everything, not just on my club, not just on my country. And I was like, this is Nasser Al-Khelaifi. For me, this is like an award. We are not talking about a physical award, but for me, it's like one of the biggest awards I have at home, because this is a legend of the game, a PSG chairman, one of the most powerful men in football world, telling me this, for me, was like unbelievable. And then obviously, when you have the opportunity to meet with Cristiano, Messi, makes the rest.
Absolutely. You told me that you would like to slow down a little bit in the future. Do you think it's possible with your mentality?
This is my biggest challenge, probably. Thank you for this question, because also many friends of mine say you will say that, but you will never do that, actually. But I think it's really important sometimes to understand when is the moment to push the button and try to change really your rhythm, because you were mentioning before Toni Kroos. For me, Toni Kroos is a big idol, not just as a player, not just as a person, but also for what he did to retire from Real Madrid with the Champions League in your hands at Wembley, being very young as a football player, especially as a midfielder. He could play, look at Luka Modric, he could play, I think, even Toni Kroos for maybe 7, 8, 9 more years, whatever he wanted. Not even in Europe, maybe in other countries make big money. And he decided to stop, go do something different. For me, this is one of the biggest source of admiration. I really respect that. I mean, I admire both cases. You have Luka Modric, who is playing football at the highest level and maybe one of the best 3 players in Serie A at this stage, still at 40 years old. And then on the other side, you have Toni retiring when you feel that it's time to retire. And so for me, to understand the moment is absolutely crucial. So I'm not saying that I'm retiring, but I'm saying that I'm slowing down because I feel this is the only way to continue. Otherwise, you're going to drop your level, and I don't want to do that. I really don't want to drop my level, because this would be something I would never forgive myself.
And also you cannot let other people do that, because, as you said, you like to control everything.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, one day I'm sure there will be other people doing the same. I think it's complicated to do exactly the same. I hope from the new generations, I really say when I meet guys maybe from the university or studying journalism, they ask me how to do that. I always say, try to go into something different. Try to do that in a different way, not exactly in the same way. What made the difference for me was to make it different. If I was going to end up staying at Sky and do the same thing as others were doing, I was never going to reach my best level. Then I decided to think out of the box, and it was working. So always try to do something even slightly different, but try to explore a new platform, try to explore a new way to communicate, do the same, but in a different way. For me, this is the only way to make something new and fresh.
But in this particular moment, would you say that you miss something because of the life that you chose for yourself?
Of course I do. But I respect what I did for myself, because on one side you can feel sad. Of course, I had the opportunities to do many other things, maybe with my friends, maybe with my family. If I think that I spoke way more to some agents than to my father, it's something that maybe one day I will say, you've been really stupid. Okay, but at the same time, as a parent, if it was my son, I would be really proud of someone who decided to build his own network, to try to do his own career, to be always respectful, and to start out of nowhere. Again, I didn't come from a football family in terms of people involved in the football industry, and so I'm really proud to do everything by myself. And so as a father, I would be really proud. I would love my son to build something very genuine by himself, and not doing something just to stay with me and that's it.
You know how they say there is a price for everything that we choose.
Exactly.
So.
I agree. But I take it, to be honest, I'm sad sometimes, but not that much.
I heard that you are a good singer.
Yeah, I try. It's my passion.
Really?
Yeah.
You're good in karaoke?
Yeah, I'm good. It's one of my secret passions. Yeah.
To close this interview, I would like to ask you if you can give just one advice to younger self, what that would be?
To myself or to the others?
To yourself at the beginnings of your career?
Good question. I think at the beginning of my career, what I would say is study even more languages. And this is also a message to the young guys who want to do this job. Because yes, I had the possibility now to speak 4 languages, but I started very late. So I started learning quite late. I mean, for me to start learning at 22, 23 is absolutely late. When I was at school...
Absolutely.
No, for me it's late, really. When I was at school, when I was maybe 15, 16, 17, and some of my friends were studying English in a perfect way, I wasn't. And for me, that was one of the biggest mistakes. And then I remember my mother was always telling me, you have to study languages, you have to try with French, you have to study English at the best way possible. I was ignoring my mother, but that was absolutely wrong. If you start early, you can deliver even better after. Study more languages, get it into as a passion and not just as an obsession for your work. If you love what you're doing, you're never going to work one single day. And so that's my case. I've been really lucky with that. But study languages. It changes your life. You want to be a journalist, a player, whoever you want to be, languages are going to change your life.
Fabrizio, thank you so much for this interview, and I wish you good luck with everything that you will do next.
Thank you for coming. It's been a pleasure, and good luck to all our Croatian friends also for the World Cup. So,
thank you so much.
See you soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Dame i gospodo, Fabrizio Romano i njegova druga strana medalje.